Good morning, my YouTube viewers. It is Palestine here. Welcome to my channel. Basically, I've still got the problems that I had yesterday, and it's causing me a lot of distress. And I do think that it's causing me a lot of stress, all these problems. And, but nevertheless, I wanted to go ahead and make another video this morning because I had a choice. I could make a video or I could do some studying. So I decided to go ahead and make a video and do some studying later because what I need to study is Power Query in Excel because I've never used Power Query. So I need to learn how to do that for my advanced Excel course. And so, but what I wanted to talk about in this video is to try to forget about my problems. And I want to talk about the eBay stalking case, which this is something that I heard of on Dr. Jessica Taylor's Facebook page. And she was talking about the eBay stalking case. I thought it was very interesting because I was stalked by, or gang stalked by my former employer, Foster Wheeler. And so I want to compare the eBay stalking case with my own personal experience of gang stalking. So the eBay stalking case is a 2019 corporate cyber stalking and harassment campaign. eBay safety and security employees targeted David and Ina Steiner, the publishers of a blog, because they were unhappy with critical coverage of eBay. The blog is called E-commerce Bites. And so basically, because eBay didn't like some critical coverage in the blog, they ordered a coordinated harassment campaign to silence the couple. And then they sent bizarre deliveries of a pig mask, a fetal pig, cockroaches, spiders, a funeral wreath, and a book about surviving the loss of a spouse. Well, one thing that I know is that if you send something over the post or you have something delivered, then there's going to be an audit trail because the post is going to have a postmark on it, and you would be able to identify where the parcel was delivered. And then if you ordered the parcel to be delivered from a courier company, then the courier company would be able to say who commissioned that parcel. So I think that the people who had these items sent to the couple's house didn't know a whole lot about the law, a whole lot about audit trails, because I'm sure that there was an audit trail to all of these things that were sent to the couple's house, and that's how they were able to track it down to employees of eBay. And then the digital harassment that the couple was subjected to was they posted fake Craigslist ads inviting people to their house to attend sex parties, and they sent them threatening tweets and messages. And again, there's going to be an audit trail to that. If they posted an ad on Craigslist, then they would be able to find out who actually posted that ad. If they sent them threatening tweets and messages, then they would be able to track down where the tweet tweet was sent from, because every communication has an IP address. So these people who were harassing this couple didn't know very much. They didn't know very much about IT security and how tweets and emails can be traced back to an IP address. They didn't know that if you place an ad on Craigslist, that can be traced back. And obviously, they would have had to have paid to place that ad. And so it would be traced back to whoever paid for the ad. They also conducted physical surveillance of the couple and tried to put GPS trackers on the car. I don't know how this couple knew they were being surveilled, and I don't know how this couple knew that they were trying to put a GPS tracker on their car, but obviously they found out. And so basically, because this eBay is really an amateur in gangstalking, and so the people who committed these acts were not actually very clever. And I'm going to explain that why to you. So they were able to trace back who sent the parcels to their home. They were able to trace back who opened the ads on Craigslist. They were able to trace back who sent them nasty tweets and emails. And so 7 former employees and contractors of eBay were convicted and sentenced to prison or home confinement. And the thing is because this happened in the United States, I believe, so the United States awards punitive damages, whereas the UK doesn't. So this couple was awarded $56 million settlement in a civil case, because in the United States you can ask for punitive damages, but in the US they don't have punitive damages, so you're not going to get very much from a lawsuit. Well, I think that the people at eBay who carried out this campaign of harassment were amateurs. They didn't know very much, and they also hired people to harass this couple. They didn't know very much, because obviously if you send something to somebody's house, the post office is going to have a record of definitely where it was sent from. The post office is going to be able to find out where it was sent from. If you open up an ad in Craigslist, well, you're going to have to pay for that ad. So they would be able to trace back who paid for the ad. Then you'd be able to trace that out. And then if you send somebody a tweet or an email, that tweet or that email has an IP address. So you'll be able to find out the IP address of where that tweet or email was sent. And as far as surveilling people, I don't know how they found out they were being surveilled unless they actually took pictures of the car and the license plate was able to be tracked to somebody. With regard to putting a GPS tracker on their car, I don't know how they found that out. I don't know what these people were intending to do, but they weren't very good gang stalkers. And so I want to compare it to my own experience, because I was gang stalked out of my job at Foster Wheeler. And so Foster Wheeler was operating a gang stalking ring. And basically, they knew they didn't want to have any audit trail going back to them. So in addition to operating a gang stalking ring, and I believe this was financially motivated. I believe that they were taking out insurance policies on single people who didn't have any dependents and gang stalking these people. And when they were ultimately harmed, which was the ultimate plan, they made money. They made money off that. And you can do that. I did look it up on the internet a long time ago, and it said that is one way that companies make money off their employees is to take insurance policies out on them against their knowledge. And so I believe that is what was done to me, because I was single, no dependents. Foster Wheeler made sure that I was isolated. And so basically, so Foster Wheeler was much more adept at gangstalking than eBay, because eBay got caught, and 7 people in eBay have been sentenced to prison or home confinement, and eBay had to pay $56 million in compensation to this couple that they were harassing. Foster Wheeler ultimately found out because whistleblowers came forward and said the corrupt business practices that Foster Wheeler had. But these corrupt business practices pertained only to the way they got contracts. It didn't pertain to the way they treated their employees, because Foster Wheeler had a really large legal department. And so their really large legal department was designed to cover up any legal problems that they had. So these people in Foster Wheeler was a big company, a big legal department. A lot of the harassment that I experienced was done through the IT system. And so Foster Wheeler was definitely not going to let any police or authorities into their IT system to see what they were doing. And so they made sure, in my case, Foster Wheeler made sure that the management of Foster Wheeler wasn't caught doing anything. And one time I went to one of these lunchtime talks, because Foster Wheeler would have lunchtime talks, and they would talk about fraudulent business practices, which they should know all about that. And they were talking about this group of people who were committing embezzling funds. And they said that these people, there wasn't an audit trail, because the masterminds behind the criminal activity made sure that they were not implicated. They made sure that their name didn't appear anywhere. And what they did was they had their employees do things. And so basically I was subjected to harassment by Foster Wheeler's employees. And I will be making videos about the harassment that I was subjected to. But a lot of the harassment was done in their IT department. And since I didn't work in the IT department, I can't tell you exactly what was going on, but I know it was done by their IT department. I do know that. But Foster Wheeler got off scot-free. They're experts in criminal activity, and they're probably, so Foster Wheeler was sold to AMAC, and it became AMAC Foster Wheeler. So Foster Wheeler was run to the ground, because instead of focusing on being the best that they could be in project management consultancy, they were running a gangstalking ring to make money off their vulnerable employees. So it was sold to AMAC, and then AMAC Foster Wheeler was run to the ground, and then that was sold to Wood, and then Wood had to take on the liabilities that were incurred by Foster Wheeler. And because Wood had to take on the liabilities that were incurred by Foster Wheeler, Wood was run to the ground. And so now Wood has been taken over by a Middle Eastern company called Sadara. And it's been taken off the stock exchange as well. It's no longer in the stock exchange. And I think it's a privately run group of companies, but Wood was allowed to keep its name. It's owned by a Middle Eastern company, Sadara, but it was allowed to keep its name. And so yesterday I was looking to see if there was anything in the news on Wood, and it's not. It's not on the news. Sadara has taken Wood over, and so I don't know what's going on with Wood now, because yesterday I looked on Google to see if anything was in the news about Wood, and there's not anything recent going on about Wood. But so Wood is not a UK company anymore. It is a Middle Eastern company. But the people in Wood got to keep its name. So Wood is still in the town that I live in. So I'm sure that some of the people in Foster Wheeler who were responsible for harassing me and participated in the harassment are in Wood too. So I'm sure that they're carrying on some of the same tactics that they carried on with me, because they never had to take responsibility for what they did to me. They got off scot-free for that. Foster Wheeler had to take responsibility for the corrupt business practices of buying contracts, because they were employing third-party agents, and these third-party agents were buying contracts, which is something that you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to buy contracts, but that's what they were doing. And so Foster Wheeler had to be made accountable for that, and because of that, Foster Wheeler is no longer a business. There's no more Foster Wheeler anymore. But Foster Wheeler was never made accountable for the way they gangstalked me and other people. So they were very adept at that, and I think it was done for financial reasons. I think they were picking on single women and men, people who were vulnerable, didn't have any dependents, and they were gangstalking those people. And the idea behind it was for something terrible to happen to those people, and then Foster Wheeler could make a claim on the insurance policy that they had taken out on them. But since I'm the victim, I'm the outsider looking in, I can't tell you exactly what they were doing, but I do believe it was financially motivated. And so the actual masterminds of this gangstalking ring, that was the executives of the company. And I know it was the executives of the company because I was written letters by this lady who was an executive, top of HR. And then I was writing letters by a man who was the executive of the proposals department. And they were nasty letters, and I was writing letters by human resources. Those letters were really nasty. They were nasty letters. I couldn't even bring myself to read them. They were so awful. And then so when I finally was able to read them, I realized just how awful they were, because I had made a complaint, and the complaint was covered up, and it was basically a case of victim blaming, and they just said I was mentally ill and I needed to see my doctor. But those letters, all those letters that were really nastily written, because it could be used as a case of harassment. And all those letters that were nastily written, they were removed from my apartment because I didn't have anybody to talk to. I didn't have anybody to tell. I didn't have anybody to give me any support. So when I was out of my apartment, and I do believe it was one day, they sent me on I went to Basingstoke to register at an agency, and this was an all-day an all-day affair because I had to get up, go to the train station, take the train to Basingstoke, go to Basingstoke, register with the agency, take the train back to the town I live in, and it would have been an all-day affair. So that would have been long enough for people to go into my apartment and take whatever documents they wanted to take and replace them with more moderately worded documents. But these people knew where everything in my apartment was. And so the actual mastermind, nothing happened to them except for the corrupt business practices that was not related to me. Now, they lost their jobs because in the UK decided not to make these people, these executives, stand trial for their corrupt business practices. If they had been in the US, they would have had to stand trial for that. And if you can take the case of Enron as an example, because the executives in Enron had to stand trial, and some of them went to prison for that. But in the UK, they did not have to stand trial for their corrupt business practices. The only thing that happened to them was they lost their jobs. But the people who harmed me, nothing was done about that. They didn't have to take any responsibility for the fact that they harmed me and other people. And so, I just think that eBay didn't really know what they were doing. They were a new-ish company. They probably didn't have a very big legal department. They probably didn't have a very big IT department. And so they just were amateurs. They were amateurs, and that's why they got caught. I mean, what they did was nasty, but they were amateurs. But Foster Wheeler was a professional. It was a multinational corporation that had offices all over the world. They knew exactly what they were doing. The executives made sure that they weren't going to get caught. They used their employees. And I was harassed inside of work. I was harassed outside of work. I was harassed inside my home. I was harassed outside my home. I was harassed in other towns. And I was harassed even when I was on holiday. And, Foster Wheeler never had to take responsibility for that. They had to take responsibility for the fact their corrupt business practices, which were global, and basically what they were doing was buying contracts, but they never had to take responsibility for what they did to me. And that's why I'm sitting here in my tiny little apartment making this video comparing eBay to Foster Wheeler. So I do hope that, now Dr. Jessica Taylor, she brought this case of eBay to light because I'm not aware of it being covered in the news. It was in Google, and I was able to get my notes from Google, but it's not widely covered. I've never seen anything about it on YouTube, and I watch a lot of YouTube. So I don't think it's widely covered in the press. So I think that's it. That's a comparison between eBay and Foster Wheeler, and how eBay terrorized a couple who wrote a blog that was critical of them, and Foster Wheeler decided that they would make money off of a little middle-aged single office worker with no dependents. So eBay was made accountable for what they did, because I think the people who committed these crimes weren't very astute, and so the audit trail led back to them, and that's why they could be taken to court and prosecuted. But the people at Foster Wheeler were very good at committing crime, because they had a big legal department and a big IT department so they could cover up any criminal activities that they were engaged in. And it was only when whistleblowers came forward to the Serious Fraud Office and made complaints to the Serious Fraud Offices and other authorities in the UK, and Operation Car Wash in Brazil was an operation in Brazil to clean up the corruption in Brazil, and that was one of the operations that covered Foster Wheeler and others' corrupt business activities. So that's just an example, a comparison between eBay and Foster Wheeler. So eBay was caught for what they did because they were not very astute about the law, about IT, about audit trails. And Foster Wheeler never had to be accountable for what they did to me and other people because they had a really big legal department. They had a really big IT department. And so they used their employees, and they hired people outside of the company. And the executives behind it all made sure that no audit trail ever led to them. So I think that concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you like my video, please like and subscribe. And I look forward to making more videos for you. And thank you so much for taking an interest in my very pathetic life.